Okay, guys, so I just thought some of you saw in the PDX Land video and portion of it, somebody mentioned that I actually finished my Hadron mod, and that is true. It is done-ish. Couple of things I learned. One is I had the power supply sleeved without the case. I don't know that I would do that again because I'd probably just ship the whole case with the power supply so that the person that I had sleeving for me, because I'm super lazy and I don't like sleeving, that they would know how long everything needed to be. So I think I would do sleeving last. I did it first. I don't know why. Anyways, I do like the color of the sleeving. It does not match my case color very well. That's the other thing. So I definitely, look at doing sleeving last, I would say. The other thing is, or using the sleeving to pick your color. I guess that would work too. The other thing I'll say is it definitely needs a clear coat of some form, whether that's a satin clear coat or a shiny clear coat. It needs something on top of the spray paint. And even then, I took a piece of metal and tried the spray paint. I used etching primer, regular spray paint, and a satin varnish, top coat, and it still rubs off. So you have to be super careful with it. It scuffs extremely easy. It's part of the problem when you're not using automotive quality paint. The case itself, let's talk a little bit about that. It actually came apart pretty well. I did have to rivet some of it back together. The front panel is really gooey and you have to pry it off. And you guys have seen that from previous videos. But the one thing I will say is the front panel is extremely tough to get off the way that I did the rivets. So unfortunately, I did not get the exact same kind of rivets in there that were there before. I already scuffed, Hardware Canucks has been doing the scratch test. I scuffed this plastic about 30 seconds after taking the plastic film off of it. So, yeah, that's a Hadron thing, not necessarily a me, doing the mod thing. But, it came out, I think the paint came out really well, but you can see, like, right here, let's see if I can get close enough, there's a little ding there, and that's just from putting on the panel. It slipped one time and nicked, and there's already down to the primer. And that's what seems to be, if I scratch it, it seems to go right down to the primer, but not down to the top coat of the original color, the black. So the self-etching primer did a really good job. The regular spray paint, like I said, I really think, you need to do probably self-etching paint as well, which is an automotive paint. Almost all automotive paints are self-etching. A little bit about what's in here real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. So I have the EVGA little cooler on there because there's just no room for liquid cooling in this thing. I'm sure people have done it, but that's beyond the scope of me for sure. It has a Core 2 Duo in there, which has been running great, honestly. It's a GTX 670 Asus and 8 gigs of RAM, 1600 megahertz. And it's the perfect little LAN machine. Like, it's not going to be the destroyer of worlds, but it's got enough horsepower that it can play games. It's just not going to play games at, a billion FPS and super high resolution. But then again, Jason used this when we went down to PDX LAN. On a 20-inch screen, you don't really need billion D resolution with billion D, FPS and it was just fine for what we were using it for. This is actually going to go on my 3D printers and as a backup machine for like streaming and stuff like that. It works really well for that. Last thing, power supply and acoustics. The power supply is a rock star. It does get loud. Now, in a LAN setting, that's not a big deal because it's so noisy in the LAN. It's ridiculous. But in the house here, it's definitely loud. It's going to go in my furnace room, actually, or in the room that also has my furnace. So acoustics, not really that big of a deal. It's going to be with the 3D printers, which are going wee, 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 wee anyways. That's not a big deal. The top fans are definitely loud, and they ramp up. Like, even if you put them on a curve, the inside of the case gets pretty warm pretty fast because there's not a ton of airflow. There is no direct airflow. There's no intake fans on this case. There's only exhaust. So it's basically grabbing any air through any holes that can get into that case and then exhausting it out the top. But like I said, it actually does do extremely well for the size. This thing is tiny. And other than that, you know, if you want a really, really, really small case that I actually didn't mind working in, you know, big mitts, I actually like this, you know, better than the Node 304, better than the Cooler Master little guy. I just like, it's more of a desktop form factor. I like that, you know, taller rather than cubier. That's just me, you know, that's completely personal preference. So at the end of the day, was it worth it? Well, I sure learned a lot. I definitely made some mistakes that I would change, but for what I'm using it for, you know, it hasn't harmed the case. It hasn't harmed, you know, anything, airflow or anything like that. And as long as I'm careful not to scratch it or ding it, it's perfectly fine. It's going to look great where I'm going to put it by the 3D printers. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to do the job that I need it to do. That said, thank you to EVGA for, you know, sending this case a long time ago, but also for sponsoring our trip down to PDX LAN. You know, they provided the 980 Ti that I gamed on down there, and that was pretty awesome. And, you know, a special thank you to Jacob over at EVGA. They've been a great supporter of the channel, and I really appreciate it. That said, guys, give us a follow. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, TimmyTechTV. So at TimmyTechTV, or just regular old Facebook /TimmyTechTV there. And until next time, this is Tim for, well, you know, see you next time.